Anybody on besides me?
I'm here.
Harvey, you on?
Yes, I am.
Okay. You caught did you catch the email I sent?
Yes, I did. But I
Right.
had no time, so I just hung in there.
Okay. All right. Yeah, at the end of davening, I saw we were running late. So I had your email and Steve's email. And so that was what we sent. Okay, gentlemen, we are, we'll do the best we can given the situation, all right? And let me start off, as we usually do, acknowledging our learning sponsors. A Year of Learning by Sue and Arnie Gerlich in memory of Malcolm Proman and Philip Mann, and Yisrael David ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch and Beryl ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch. Yosef Meir ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Henya Rivka Pro Lozna ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch. In memory of family murdered in the Holocaust, Arav Tzvi Hirsch ben Shlomo Yaakov, Sarah bat Ephraim, Yisrael David ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Ephraim ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Adia bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Miriam bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Pesel bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shalom ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shlomo Yaakov ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shmuel ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch. Sharon and Fred Lisker, their family and many friends, in memory of her dear mom, Harriet Friedman Edelbas Yaakov. Leslie and Gail Kaplan, in memory of their parents, Harry and Marjorie Siddell Irving and Pearl Kaplan. Friends of Avi Gitler, Avram Meir ben Shimon, and Martha Gitler Charna Bat Yeshaya. Children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren of Toby Paris, Sarah Tova Bat Yisrael Dov in her memory. Friends of Joe Wolf, Yosef ben Chaim. Sorry. Charlie Galfenstein and Sam Levine, in memory of Ramona Levine, Rachel Mata Bat Asher. Friends of Nina Mornester, Nechama Asna Bat Yitzchak Aharon. Have a month of learning by Rebecca Lewis and Susan Watansky, in memory of their aunt and sister Miriam Bat Yosef Devora. A week of learning by Marty and Marla Teichman, in memory of his father Yom Tov Lipper ben Abraham. Edith Vigdor, in memory of her father-in-law Meir Leib ben Dov Bear. Michael and Judy Paretsky, in memory of his brother Avram ben Gershon. Today being the 14th, we have a day of learning by Bruce Deutsch, in memory of his mother Ella Bat Dov Wolf, and by Rabbi Dr. Moshe Kranzler, in memory of his brother Chaim Shmuel Bereb Yerachmiel. May the Hashem is having Aliyah, Crank Rafia, Velti Yeshua Hashem Atzliah, and the Chol B'nai Israel, a good Gaben Shtian. All right. Okay. All right. We'll do what we can. Okay, today's Gemara, sorry, is Megillah. So on the start, of course, Bet, top of Amud Beis, right? So what can we do? But ask ourselves initially a question to introduce the Gemara. It's a long Mishnah and then the Gemara. When do you read the Megillah? Right? So that's the question. When do you read the Megillah? And so the Megillah Mishnah is going to start telling us various examples of what day to read it on and what community reads it at the appropriate occasion. Okay? Megillah Nikreit b'Yud Aleph, b'Yud Bet, b'Yud Gimel, b'Yud Dalet, b'Ted Vav. Megillah is read on the 11th, the 12th, the 13th, and the 14th, and the 15th. Lo pachot v'lo yoter. Not less, in other words, not before, below yoter, and not after. Okay? Krachin hamukafin choma miyamot Yehoshua ben Nun korin b'Ted Vav. And those cities that are surrounded by a wall from the days of Joshua, okay, read on the 15th. Right? Farim va'ayarot gedolot korin b'Yud Dalet. Okay, those towns and cities that are, okay, larger cities, read on the 14th. Ela shakfarim makdimim liyom haknisa. But rather, as we mentioned yesterday, there's a dispensation, so to speak, given to smaller communities, okay, smaller villages, that they enter, they come in to the day of Knisa. And we pointed out there are a couple of different explanations for Yom Knisa. One might have been simply that it was the market day. Another could be that it was the day for the Torah reading. Another because it is the day in which the courts met. Okay, Ketzad, how is that? Chaliot Yudalet B'Sheni. If the 14th came out on the second day of the week, Monday, Kfarim Vayirot Gedolot Korin Bo B'Yom, the towns and the large cities read on that day, U'Mekafot Choma L'Machar, and walled cities the next day. Chaliot B'Shlishi or B'Revi'i, if the 14th came out on the third or fourth day of the week. Okay, Kfarim Makdimim Liyom HaKnisa, then the small villages come in on the day of assembly. Va'ayarot Gedolot Korin Bo B'Yom, and large towns read it on that day. U'Mekafot Choma L'Machar, and walled cities the next day. Chaliot B'Chamishi, if the 14th came out on the fifth day of the week, Thursday. Kfarim Vayirot Gedolot Korin Bo B'Yom, small towns and larger cities read on that day. U'Mekafot Choma L'Machar, and again walled cities the next day. Chaliot Be'erev Shabbat, okay, if it came out 14th on Friday. Kfarim Makdimim Liyom HaKnisa, small towns advance to the assembly day, Thursday, day before. Va'ayarot Gedolot U'Mukafot Choma Korin Bo B'Yom, and large villages, large cities, and walled cities then read on that day, okay, on that Friday. So they would read on the 14th, right? So that's significant because that we just got through at the beginning of the Mishnah that said walled cities read on the 15th. Okay, that's true. That's true, but we have to see, is the Gemara going to come back and deal with that as a possible contradiction? Okay, just pointing it out. Chaliot b'Shabbat, if the 14th came out on the Shabbos. Kfarim Vayirot Gedolot Makdimim V'Korin Liyom HaKnisa. Okay, then small towns and large cities advance to the assembly day, which is the previous Thursday, we said. Umukafot Choma L'Machar, and then the walled cities the next day on Sunday. Right. Chaliot Echar HaShabbat. If it came out on the first day of the week, Sunday, okay, the 14th. Kfarim Makdimim Liyom HaKnisa, small villages, right, advance to the day of assembly, okay, which would make it the earliest possible, the 11th, correct? All right, Va'ayarot Gedolot Korin Bo B'Yom, and large cities on that day. U'Mekafot Choma L'Machar, and walled cities the next day. Okay, so now we start with our Gemara. Gemara asks, Mina Megillah Nikreta, okay, B'Yud Aleph, when it says that the Megillah is read on the 11th, Minalan, what's the basis of this? In other words, usually we take the words Minalan, is there a biblical citation that gives this a source for this? Okay, but we're going to see what it is. Minalan, what do you mean? Where is it from? We need to explain it as we're going to do forthwith. All right? Chachamim hikilu al hakfarim, liyot makdimim liyom haknisa, kadei sheyisapku mayim umazon la'acheim shebekrachim. I'm sorry. That the sages made a leniency regarding the surrounding small towns, that they would advance to the day of assembly so that they can provide added food and drink, okay, food and water to their brethren in the cities. In other words, the assumption being that the people in the cities usually got their foodstuffs from the surrounding fields and the surrounding workers and villagers and farmers. And what? No Costco, no. Okay. So, all right. Anan hachi ka'aminan. And here, this is what we say. Michte, since kulhu anshe Knesset Hagdola takninu, since we assume that the men of the Great Assembly were the ones who established the dates, the Isal Kadata, because if you're going to say Anshe Knesset Hagdola Yudalid Vav Tikun, if you're going to say that only that they declared it on the 14th and the 15th, Atu Rabbanan, Va'akre Takan Takanata, the Takinu Anshe Knesset Hagdola, is it possible that other rabbis, in other words, a later court, will come and uproot a decree that was established by the Anshe Knesset Gedolah? Is that even possible? V'hatnan, but aren't we taught elsewhere in the Mishnah? Ein Beit Din yechol levatel divrei Beit Din chaveiro. One court cannot nullify the words of another court. Ela im kein gadol mimenu bechachma u'b'minyan, unless it is greater than them in wisdom and number. Ela pshita. Rather, it must be obvious then. Kulhu anshe knesset gdola takinu, that all of these dates were therefore established by the members of the Knesset Gedolah. Okay, so therefore our language should be, instead of minalan, it's more appropriate to say heicha ramiza. Where is it hinted at? Okay. Amar Rav Shemin bar Abba Amar Rabbi Yochanan Amar Kra. He suggests the following pasuk: L'kayem et yemei hapurim ha'ele bizmanehem. Okay, so we have the word bizmanehem, okay, which is plural. Zmanim harbe tiknu lahem, implying that there were many dates, many times that they established it. Hai mi bayale lagufe, but maybe we need that pasuk for its own purpose of, so to speak, clarifying and fixing the 14th and the 15th. Maybe that's the reason, right? Imkain lema krazman. If that's the case, the answer the Gemara gives, then it would have simply said not zmanehem, but zman, in their appropriate time. Okay? My zmanehem. So why then the use of the plural? Zmanim tuva. It means more times. Okay? In other words, multiple times, not just the 14th and the 15th. Okay? Va'akate mebaye le zmano shozeh lo kizmano shozeh. But still we need to say that the time for this one is not exactly the same time as for that one. For regarding the 14th and the 15th, right? Imkain lema kra zmanam. So let the time say their, their, their times, namely one for this, the 14th, one for this, the 15th. My zmanehem. Why then the way of the form of the pasuk? Their, their, their multiple times. Okay? Shmat mina kulu. We learned from this, it refers to all of them. Ema zmanim tuva. So let the pasuk simply say many times. Okay? Zmanehem dumya dizmanam. Why? Because when we say their times, it seems similar to their time. Okay? Ma zmanam trey, av zmanehem trey. We might therefore think that their time refers to the two, in other words, 14, 15. Okay? And that therefore their times also might refer to 14. Okay? Okay, to more. Okay? Ve'ema tresa tlesa. So let's say if you're going to add their times plural is 2 plus 2 equal 4. Which 2 are we adding? Are we adding 2 earlier or 2 later? Let's go on. Ve'ema tresar tlesar. So maybe that's going to give us the 12th and the 13th, right? Kidda Amar Rav Shmuel Bar Yitzchak. As he says, namely what? Yud Gimel Zman Kihila Lechol. He, that the 13th was a day of gathering, okay? Because already we knew from the Megillah itself that the people needed to gather to defend themselves on the 13th, right? V'lo tzarich l'rebuye, okay? And that does not therefore need to be included, okay? Hachanami here too, Yud Gimel Zman Kihila L'Cholhi. The 13th was already therefore considered an appropriate date to include them, all right? For them to be gathered, okay? There, V'lo tzarich l'rebui, and therefore we don't need to assume to say that their times has to be darshaned to include the 13th. Okay? Ve'ema, so now let's flip it. Go to the opposite again. Ve'ema, shitsar, v'shivsar. Maybe I'm going to say when it adds 2, it's to the 16th and 17th, right? V'lo ya'avor kativ. But our Mishnah said you don't go past the Megillah itself. Well, the Megillah itself, right? Okay, that we don't go past, namely the 15th. For Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachmani Amar, he says, Amar Kra, citing the following pasuk: Ki yamim asher nachu bahem haYehudim, like those days in which the Jews rested. Yamim kiyamim, days like those days. The Rabbot Yud Aleph Yud Bet. That comes then to add the 11th and the 12th. Ve'ema tresar tlesa. But I might say the 12th and the 13th. Amar Rabbi Shimon Bar Yitzchak. Yud Gimel Zman Kihila L'Cholhi V'lo Tzarich L'Ribui. We've just said that the 13th is already included because that's already considered a day of assembly. Therefore, we don't have to include it as a possible date. So it's all right. So therefore, what are we looking for? Ve'ema, shitsar, v'shivsar. And I would say if you're talking the 16th and the 17th, v'lo ya'avor kativ. And it's written already, you can't go past. Therefore, we can't include those. Rabbi Shimon Bar Nachmani says as follows: My tamalo amar mi bizmanehem. Why didn't the pasuk say it that way? From all of their time, so to speak. Zman, zmanam, zmanehem, lo mashmale. He did not learn that Masorah. He didn't learn that drasha. Exactly. V'Rav Shemen bar Abba. Okay, and regarding him, my tama lo amar mikiyamim, from like these days, right? The other, amar lach, hahu l'dorot hu dichtiv. He saw that as defining a drasha that said that tells us that these days should be observed for ongoing generations. Okay, all right. So Amar Rabba Bar Chana Amar Rabbi Yochanan Zo Divrei Rabbi Akiva Stimata'a. Those are the words of the unattributed. Those are the words of Rabbi Akiva, but they're not attributed to him. Okay, all right. So the Darish Zman Zmanam Zmanehem, that he was the one that expounded that particular drasha of those words. Aval chachamim omrim, but the sages say, ein korin ota ela bizmana. We don't read it except in its appropriate time. Okay, so what does that mean? May tive. Let's challenge that with a bright. Amar, right? Amar Rabbi Yehuda ematai. That's the case when Bizman shanim ketiknam v'Yisrael shruyin al admatan. It's when the years are properly set, as the calendar has been fixed, right, by the Beis Din, right, and that Jewish people are living on their land. So two extra criteria here. Okay. Aval, but, says the Gemara, Bisman hazeh ho'il umistaklin ba. But giving this time that people look forward, I'm going to say, to the reading of the Megillah at the appropriate time. Why? Because it's a way to determine when Passover is going to come.
They look at a luach. There's no alfibra anymore. They just
Okay.
a known date.
All right. I didn't have that explanation. Okay. You may be right, but that was not the source that I saw. Okay. That this way, by knowing when the Megillah was read, the date of Purim, they knew a month later was going to be Pesach. That was the explanation I found. Ein korinota ela bismana. That therefore it was to be read on its appropriate time, the 14th, 15th. Okay. Rabbi Yehuda, aliba daman. According to whom was Rabbi Yehuda? Ilema aliba de Rabbi Akiva. If you're going to say he based it on the statement of Rabbi Akiva, that drasha, okay, of Zman, Zmanam, etc., right? Afilu b'zman hazeh, ita lahai takandata. We should have then that same takana applying to the villages, okay? Ela lav, but not. Aliba de Rabbanan, ubizman shahashanim ketiknam, v'Yisrael shruyin al admatam. Okay, no, but it's based on the rabbis that to have the criteria of the fixed portion of the years and of the people living on their land. Miha, nevertheless, says the Gemara. Karinan, okay, we read it, Tiyufta de Rabbi Yochanan, Tiyufta. And therefore that is a proof text against Rabbi Yochanan. Okay, now, Gemara goes on. Ika de Amre. There are those who say this whole learning in another lashon, basically. Amar Rabba bar Barchana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Zo divrei Rabbi Akiva stimata. That was the view of Rabbi Akiva, unattributed to him. Aval chachamim amru, but the sages say, Bisman hazeh ho'il umistaklim ba. Okay, at this time, since they look forward, whether it's looking in a luach or whether it's knowing the date to determine when Pesach was coming. But ein korin ota ela bismana. We don't read it except for only in its appropriate time, 1450. Tanya nami hachi, and we have a braita that again clarifies this. Amar Rav Yehuda ematai, says Rav Yehuda, when? Bizman shahashanim ketiknam v'Yisrael shriyin al admatan. Okay, at those times. Aval bizman hazeh, this time. Ho'il umistaklim ba ein korinota ela bizmana. Okay, the Ika Amre lashon is more specific. Okay, that at this time, okay, because of that reason, okay, we read it at the appropriate time. Now, Rav Ashi, Kashale the Rabbi Yehuda at the Rabbi Yehuda. Rav Ashi had a problem, okay, because the Brisus is one thing and the other says something else, right? So what are we going to do? Okay, so let's go on. Yeah, but I got a lot of stuff to juggle. All right. All right. Umokim la lebraita karabi Yossi barabi Yehuda. Okay, and therefore he's wants to establish it according to the braita like Rabbi Yossi barabi Yehuda. Umi amar Rabbi Yochanan, right? בזמן הזה הואיל ומסתכלים בה, אין קוראים אותה אלא בזמנה. Did Rabbi, right? Did he really say that? Or minhag? But we have a contradiction that says as follows: Amar Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says, Matai. At what time? Makom shenichnasin b'sheni u'b'chamishi. Okay, at the place where they can enter on Monday or Thursday. Okay, market days, court days, etc. Makom she'en nichnasin b'sheni b'chamishi, ein korinota ela b'zmana. But on those days that they can't come in on Monday and Thursday, okay, they only read at the appropriate time on the 14th. Makom shenichnasin b'sheni b'chamishi. That would seem to say that the place where they are able on Monday and Thursday, miha korinan vafilu b'zman hazeh, that they're able to read even at this time. Umokim la lebraita karabi Yossi bar Yehuda, and therefore he establishes it according to the Braita, namely by Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda.
Which is the price of the
Rabbi Yehuda's son, Rabbi Yossi. Okay? Umishum de kashale, the Rabbi Yehuda, ad the Rabbi Yehuda, and because for Rav Ashi it was this problem of what Rabbi Yehuda said in two different places, right? Mokim la lebraita, Rabbi Yossi bar Rabbi Yehuda. Are we going to say, therefore, that because he had a problem, okay, he's going to reestablish the authorship of the Braita to somebody else, even if it is the son of Rabbi Yehuda? Okay, so watch out what your kids do. Rav Ashi, Shamiele. No, Rav Ashi learned it, De'ika detani la Rabbi Yehuda. That Rav Ashi learned it, that here it was taught according to Rabbi Yehuda. Ve'ika detani la Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda. And he also learned that there were others who taught it in the name of Rabbi Yossi bar Rabbi Yehuda. Okay? Umi dekashale, the Rabbi Yehuda ad the Rabbi Yehuda. And because he had this difficulty, okay, in one place it said Rabbi Yehuda, and in another place it said Rabbi Yehuda, what happens? Amar, he said, Man detani la Rabbi Yehuda, lav dafka, that the person who taught it according to Rabbi Yehuda was not precise, okay, in saying it that way. Man detani la Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda, dafka, but the one who taught it, the Braita, in the name of Rabbi Yossi bar Rabbi Yehuda, was precise and had the right source. Okay, let's go now to our new piece in the Mishnah. Krachim hamukafim choma miyamot Yehoshua ben Nun korim b'chamisha asar. We said the Mishnah told us that on walled cities since the time of Joshua, they read on the 50th. Okay? Mina hani mili. On what basis do we know this? Amar Rava says Rava. The Amar Kra, he says the pasuk. Al kain haYehudim haprazim hayoshvim ba'arei haprazot v'gomer. Okay, citing a pasuk from the Megillah directly. Those Jews living in gathered, spread, right? Living in those various areas, right? What does that imply? Okay, midaprazim ba'arba asa says since they're spread out, they were the ones who would read it on the 14th. Mukafim, those gathered, okay, right? B'chamisha asar. In the hall.
Those that were in the less populated areas.
Okay.
Included fighting on the 14th.
Okay.
Those in the dense, this walled city, Shushan.
Those in the city, they fought on the 15th. Right? Ve'ema, and I would say, prazim ba'arbasa, those who were spread out, okay, on the 14th. Mukafin, klal, maybe I would say those who were on the 14th. All right, who were in wall, not at all, right? Klal lo, they wouldn't read it at all. They wouldn't observe it whatsoever. V'lav Yisrael minhu. Aren't they Jews too, so to speak? All right. In other words, weren't they under the same decree?
City slickers.
Okay. All right. And so therefore, shouldn't they also be observing the holiday, reading the Megillah, etc., etc.? Okay. Va'od, and furthermore, didn't they, Megillah itself tell us the extent of the empire was Mehodu Va'ad Kush, from India all the way to Ethiopia, or however you want to translate it. Ktiv, that's what was written. Ve'ema, and therefore I would say, Prazim Bar Bisa, the sprows spread out, were on the suburbs, so to speak, were on the 14th. Mukafin Ba'ar Besa Ubechamesa, and maybe those in walled cities on the 14th and 15th. They would read it both days. Okay, Kedichtiv, why? Because it's written the following: Liot osim et yom arbasa lechodesh adar ve et yom chamisha asar. Okay, bechol shana. Okay, it refers to both with a vav, and we're not translating the vav as or, but maybe as and in this case. All right. Right. Okay. So what happens? Et yomar ba'asar v'chamisha asar kedika amar. If it had simply read, okay, and was written in the text, the 14th and 15th, then it would be like you said. Hashta. But here, dichtiv et yom arba'a asar ve'et yom chamisha asar. But here, since it's written, okay, I'm going to say with a direct object, using et as a sign of a direct object, that it be the day of the 14th and the day of the 15th, translating it that way. Ata et upasi, comes the word et, then that's symbolizing, as we said, often as a direct object, to tell you it makes a separation between them, that 14th, 15th, right? Read it as or. Hani ba'aba asar, bahani b'chamisha asar. These on the 14th, these on the 15th. Ve'ema, and I would therefore say, prazim ba'arbesa, those that were spread out on the 14th, mukafin, and those that were gathered in walled cities, ibau be'ebesa, ibau b'chamisar. Maybe if they want, they can do the 14th. If they want, they could do the 15th. Right? Amar kra. But therefore we have the pasuk that says, Bizmanehem, their times. Okay? Zmano shel zeh, lo zmano shel zeh. The time for this one is not the time for that. Okay. Ve'ema. So now I'll throw in another curveball. Ve'ema b'tlesa k'shushan. Maybe I should say a different date. Like they should do it like Shushan, right? Which was the tlesa, right? 12th. Ashkechan asiyah. Okay. So I find here, says the Gemara, that I find what's declaring or focusing, let me phrase it that way, on the observance of the day. Zichira. What do I mean when I say remembering the day by reading the Megillah? That's what I mean by Zichira. Minala. On what basis? Amakra, says the pasuk. Vayamim ha'ela niskarim v'ne'asim. But these days are to be, I'll use the word remembered by reading the Megillah and to be observed. Okay? Itkish zichira la'asiyah. I therefore made an association between reading and observance. Matnitin deloki haitana. Therefore, our Mishnah cannot be like the Tanya who taught as follows. Rabbi Yehoshua ben Karcha Omer. He said as follows. Okay, okay. Krachim hamukafin choma miyamot achashverosh korin b'chamisha asa. Ma'itama. That those cities that are walled, okay, from the time of Achashverosh, they would read on the 15th. What would,
Because Shushan didn't have a wall.
right, right? What would be the reason? The Rebbe Yeshua ben Karcha, why? Why? What's his reasoning? Ki Shushan, regarding Shushan, Ma Shushan mukafet choma, b'yamot Achashverosh, b'korin b'chamisha asar. Because I'm going to say, were Shushan to have a wall around it, okay, at that time, okay, and read on the
No, it's
since they had walls. So therefore, other cities that would be, that might be the standard. Okay, Ma Shushan mukefet choma miyamot Achashverosh, as Shushan was surrounded by a wall on the 15th. V'korin b'chamisha asar, and they read on the 15th. Afkol shemukefet choma miyamot Achashverosh korin b'chamisha asar. So likewise, any city that is surrounded by a wall, okay, from the time of Achashverosh, they should also be reading on the 15th. This was the logic of Rabbi Yehoshua ben Karcha. V'tana didan, and our Tana, my Tama Yalif, what did he learn? Okay. Parze Kati. In one place it's written spread out or separated, in another place it's written spread out and separated. Hacha al Kain HaYehudim HaPrazim. So the Gemara gives us the psukim. Here in one case where the Jews are separated, K'tiv Hatam, and it's written there, Levad Me'arei HaParze, okay, Harbe Ma'od.
That's in already.
Right? That's already in the text of the Malahalan Mukefet Chomam Miyamot Yehoshua Benun, whereas these are then surrounded by walls from the day of Joshua. Afkan Mukefet Chomam Miyamot Yehoshua Benun. So these others also surrounded by walls from the day of Joshua as well. Now, Mara picks up and wants us to tell us. Bishlema Rabbi Yehoshua ben Karcha, lo amar katana tidan. Right? It's understandable that Rabbi Yehoshua ben Karcha didn't say like our Tana. Why? Delete le parze, because he did not have that drasha. He didn't learn or didn't have a Masorah of that drasha of parze.
It's also tricky because one is Subin and one is
right? Elatana didan ma'itama lo amar Rabbi Yehoshua ben Karcha. So why didn't our Tana, why did he base it on Yeshua and not base it on Achashverosh as Rabbi Yehoshua ben Karcha argued, right? What was the reasoning? Ma'itama taha'id le parze, because he had that Masorah of that drush. Okay? Hachi kama. This is what we might say. Ela Shushan, the Avdin and Kaman, but Shushan did according to what? Or whom?
No, Shushan doesn't meet criteria.
Right, we'll see. Lo kiparazim, v'lo kimukafim. Because maybe we're going to say Shushan was neither like spread out towns, nor was it like walled cities from the time of Joshua. Amar Rava, says Rava, va'amre la Kadi, and some says it was Kadi who said, Shani Shushan o'il v'ne'asa ba'nes. No, Shushan is unique because a miracle was done. Right? B'shlema latana didan, hainu dichtiv, medina ir ve'ir. That's acceptable. That argument of a nace is acceptable to our Tana. Why? Because he can point out that it's written in the text, Medina, province to province, ear to ear, city to city. Medina, lechalek bein mukafin choma miyamot Yehoshua ben Nun, lemukefet choma miyamot Achashverosh. From one province to another allows him to separate, make a distinction between those cities that were walled at the time of Yehoshua and those who were walled later at the time of Achashverosh. Ir va'ir, nami lechalek, from one city to another city, also to make a distinction. Bein Shushan l'shar ayarot, between Shushan and other cities, right? Ela l'Rabbi Yeshua ben Kacha, but for Rabbi Yeshua ben Kacha, Bishlema Medina, lechalek bein Shushan l'shar ayarot. That province, the province allows him to make a distinction between Shushan and other cities. Ela ir va'ir, lamai ata, excuse me. But from one city to another, on what is he going to base it? What is it going to come? Amarlach Rabbi Yeshua ben Kacha. He would argue back as follows: Ulatana didan mi necha. And as far as your our Tana, is it really that simple, that easy for him? Right? Kevan de itle parze. Since he has the drasha from we saw earlier of separate, Medina lamali. Why does he even need then the drasha of province to province? Maybe he doesn't need it, or maybe he uses it for something else. Elakra the drasha huda'ata, but rather he needs it for a different drasha. Ukeda Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi huda'ata, and he uses it for a drasha of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, who brings as follows: the Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Karach v'kol hasamuchlo, a town and all that's surrounding it, v'chol hanireh imo nidun kikrach, and all that is able to see that town, okay, that right. Right, they can see it, and from it they can see out. Right, ad kama. What's the distance? Amar Rav Yirmiyah ve'itema Rabbi Chia bar Abba. Others say Rabbi Chia bar Abba. Kimi chamatan leTaveria, as in the distance from Chamat to Taveria. Meal. It was 1 Roman mile. Okay. Velema meal, so let him say a meal, right? Ha kamash malan. Okay, here therefore also he's coming to tell us an additional learning, namely the shiura de meal. Okay, what then is an example of a distance of a mile? A meal, kamahave kimechamatan letaveria. What we say is the distance from Chamat to Taveria. Okay, and to finish up, V'amar Rabbi Yirmiyah, says Rabbi Yirmiyah, v'itema Rabbi Chia bar Abba. Others says Rabbi Chia bar Abba. We have a mnemonic device here, okay, so to speak, minat pach. Okay, these letters, Sofim, Omrun, V'tisbara. Okay, the seers, the prophets said them. Is that really the case? V'haktiv, isn't it written? Eila hamitzvot she'ein navi rashai lechadesh davar. Okay, that a prophet doesn't have the permission, the authority to create new halachas, right? From something already. Me'ata. Okay, from here, va'od, and further, ha'amar Rav Chisda, says Rav Chisda. Okay, mem v'samach shebeluchot. Okay, those 2 letters that were in the tablets. Okay, B'neis hayu omdim. Were they simply standing there in a miracle? Were they? No, I found it as a question.
No. When Hashem created the luchos, the letters that were completely connected, like
Right. Yeah, I know what you mean.
The donut hole would fall out if it wasn't a miracle.
I understand that. Okay, but you're saying you read it as a statement. And I'm saying the source I saw read it as a question. Okay? That's all. And he says, Mahavahavu v'lo havu yade Okay, hey be'emtza teva, v'hei besof teva, v'atu tzofim, v'takinu, p'tuchin be'emtza. Okay, well, that's where we're going to stop and pick up tomorrow. Okay.
Thank you.
No, I'm sorry.
All right.